Story 39 The Return from Exile, Rebuilding God's People. Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. The return to Jerusalem. After 70 years in Babylon, the time came for God's people to return home. King Cyrus of Persia conquered Babylon and made a special announcement. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem. Let his people go back and rebuild the temple. Ezra 1-2-3. Thousands of Jews led by Zerubbabel returned to Jerusalem. They found their beloved city in ruins, but they rejoiced because God had brought them home. Rebuilding the temple. The people began rebuilding the temple of God, but enemies tried to stop them. Years passed and the work slowed down. God sent the prophets Haggai and Zechariah to encourage them, saying, "Be strong and work, for I am with you." Haggai 2:4. At last the temple was completed, and the people celebrated with joy Ezra and the law of God. Years later, Ezra the scribe came to Jerusalem to teach the people God's law. He gathered them and read from the book of the law, reminding them of how to live according to God's commands. The people listened carefully and repented of their sins, promising to follow God again. Nehemiah rebuilds the walls. Even though the temple was rebuilt, Jerusalem's walls were still broken and the city was unprotected. Nehemiah, a Jewish official serving in Persia, heard about this and prayed to God. The king allowed him to return and rebuild the walls. Despite opposition from enemies, Nehemiah and the people worked hard, completing the walls in just 52 days. They dedicated their work to God and rejoiced, knowing that Jerusalem was secure again. The people's promise to God. After the walls were completed, Ezra and Nehemiah led the people in renewing their covenant with God. They confessed their sins and promised to obey Him. The last prophet, Malachi, reminded them to stay faithful, for one day the Lord would send His messenger, the Messiah. Reflection for children. This story teaches us that no matter how broken our lives may seem, God can rebuild and restore us. Like the Israelites, we must always turn back to God, trust in His plans, and work for His kingdom. He is always with us, helping us overcome every challenge.